Seeing how I did one for Boeing a few months back and how well that video performed, it only makes sense to follow up with Airbus. This is for the Airbus fans out there because trust me, there are a lot. This is when Airbus becomes air tanks. Let's take a look at some of the incidents that really showcased how robust these Airbus jets are built. Enjoy! Presenting the world's largest passenger plane! Oh my gosh, the engine exploded! Oh my gosh, how did the plane stay together like that though? Let's start things off on a happy note with one of the most infamous incidents to ever take place, Qantas Flight 32. But before that, on the 18th of January 2005, the A380 rolled out of the Airbus factory, topping the 747 as the largest passenger plane, and the world was stunned with the sheer size of this jet. And on the 4th of November 2010, the world would see what this plane and what the Qantas pilots are truly made out of. Qantas Flight 32, an A380 bound for Sydney from London with a stopover in Singapore, suffered an engine explosion 2 hours into the second leg of the journey. The engine failure was significantly worse than what was anticipated, with an engine fire, debris piercing the aircraft's hydraulic lines, which, if you didn't know, are used to control the airplane, while also damaging many crucial components in the aircraft. The computer in the plane went absolutely haywire, and if the plane were to crash, it would have been one of the biggest investigations of the 21st century. And many people believe that if the pilots weren't the best of the best, the plane would have crashed because of the damage to the flight controls and the computers. But lucky for us, the pilots were the best of the best. Putting their minds together, they managed to fly the plane all the way back to Singapore 2 hours away. Now, in order for a plane to land safely, there is a maximum allowed landing weight. For an A380, that's 394 tons. Along with that, pilots extend the flaps and slats. This makes the wings bigger, generating more lift. It allows the planes to fly slower, making it safer to land. And an A380 typically lands at about 138 knots, but in this incident, the aircraft was fueled to fly all the way to Sydney 8 hours away. Typically, pilots would dump fuel, meaning spray out however much fuel they needed to make the plane lighter. But the debris had damaged that system in the plane, meaning they couldn't, and hence the aircraft was 40 tons over its maximum landing weight. Along with this, as I said earlier, the debris had damaged the aircraft's flight controls, including the flaps and slats, meaning, along with being heavier, having less control, they also had to land faster than usual. Yet somehow, these amazing pilots managed to land this beast of an airplane. The plane held together just enough during the initial failure, the extremely hard, fast, heavy landing, and managed to save the lives of all 469 people on board. If that doesn't show off the skills of the pilots and the sheer strength and robust construction of the A380, I don't know what will. DHL placed an order for an A300 cargo plane, so we don't have to build it as refined as our passenger planes. We've been hit by a missile! How do you survive a missile strike? And how does the plane still exist today? Let's talk about an incident that doesn't get talked much about. In 2003, a DHL Airbus A300 was flying from Baghdad to Muharraq when it was struck by a surface-to-air missile on the left wing. Earlier, while Qantas Flight 32's flight controls were damaged, they still had some control. But in this DHL incident, zero. Basically, if these two incidents were cars, Qantas 32, you lost the steering wheel, so you were using a wrench to steer. But the DHL incident, no steering wheel, no wrench, just pray you're going in the right direction. But despite losing all of their flight controls, the pilots managed to use engine thrust to guide the plane all the way back to Baghdad. Somehow they managed to actually land the plane. Remember how Qantas 32 landed at 175 knots? This A300 landed at 180 knots, which is about 45 knots faster than usual. And if that wasn't impressive enough, the plane went off the runway and apparently it stopped in a minefield, but I'm not sure how true that is. So let's sum it up. Missile strike, hard, fast landing, and off-roading. How does a plane survive a missile strike? How does the plane landing gear not collapse at that speed and the off-roading? And yet, this A300 survived and the pilots did an insane job. And fun fact, the aircraft still exists today, though it's not able to fly and I'm pretty sure it will be used for spare parts. This plane is meant for smooth, soft landings, not hard landings. That was harder than a Ryanair landing on Jupiter in a 100-knot crosswind! How did the landing gear not collapse? Just a quick fun fact about my family. My grandparents especially love Cathay Pacific. Why? But they are definitely better than Malaysia Airlines and AirAsia. Anyways, on the 13th of April 2010, Cathay Pacific Flight 780 was bound for Hong Kong, but just shortly after departing Indonesia, the crew noticed some problems with the engine. It's a bit complicated what the warnings were, but the pilots were receiving a lot of erratic warnings from the computer about the engine performance. But despite all those warnings, the plane was deemed safe to continue flying to Hong Kong. But throughout the flight, the warnings just wouldn't stop. They kept coming on and off, and when they were approaching Hong Kong, they tried to increase engine power to climb the plane a little little bit, but got no response from the engines. If they didn't fix this now, they would crash. So they then tried to play around with the throttles and eventually managed to get some power into the engines, pull up and continue on approach. However, when they were trying to land, they reduced engine power, only to find that engine number 1 was still at 74% power, which is close to takeoff power. Despite this, they had to land the plane. So the pilots managed to guide the plane all the way to the runway where they touched down at a speed of 213 knots, which is 90 knots faster than the usual landing speed of an A330. They literally had to slam the plane on the runway where it bounced before it finally stayed on the runway, and using all of their braking power they had, the plane managed to stop. The plane had an extremely hard landing, but somehow the gear didn't collapse and the aircraft held together enough, saving the lives of all 322 people on board. Amazing job to the pilots and Airbus. Sadly though, the aircraft was broken apart in 2021. Okay, how does a tail break off a plane? Our attachment should be able to handle 100,000 pounds of force, but maybe we're wrong. Maybe they're weaker than we thought. Let's test it. Okay, yeah, that definitely wasn't 100,000 pounds. Yeah, that was 200,000 pounds. Okay, I'm sure you guys are tired of the hard landing stories, so here's something a little bit different. 2 months after 9/11, on the 12th of November 2001, American Airlines Flight 587 took off from New York. Shortly after takeoff, the plane encountered wake turbulence from a Japan Airlines Boeing 747. When an aircraft flies, it generates a lot of heavy winds and turbulent air behind the airplane. The bigger the aircraft, the stronger this is. And I'm sure you've seen videos from Mythbusters or Top Gear where they drove a car behind the 747 and the whole thing flipped over, and smaller, lighter planes are more susceptible to this. In fact, there was an incident in 2017 when a tiny Bombardier business jet encountered the wake turbulence of an A380. The whole aircraft flipped upside down. In the case of Flight 587, the two planes involved were a Boeing 747 and an Airbus A300. The Airbus encountered the wake turbulence from a 747 and the pilot flying the plane didn't respond properly due to the way he was trained. He was turning the plane left and right, which was putting enormous stress onto the vertical stabilizer, which is the big fin on the back of the plane. And just by looking at the name vertical stabilizer, I'm sure you can make out that that gigantic fin is very important. According to Airbus and their requirements for the A300, the attachment points of the vertical stabilizer are designed to handle up to 100,000 pounds of force, which is more than enough for the aircraft to fly and handle everything. But with the pilot turning the plane left and right, the stresses on the vertical stabilizer were increasing. Eventually, it surpassed that 100,000 pound limit until it hit 203,000 pounds and failed. The stabilizer broke off and the aircraft subsequently crashed, killing 260 people. But focusing on the aircraft itself, the fact that the attachments were rated at 100,000 pounds but only broke at 203,000 pounds, that really shows you the safety factor of these Airbus jets. Now let's cover some incidents I couldn't fit into the short, starting with this one because I already sensed the annoying comments coming in asking where is this incident. Air Transat Flight 236. On the 24th of August 2001, the plane, an A330, was flying from Toronto to Portugal. When halfway through the flight, there was an issue. The pilots noticed that the fuel in the aircraft wasn't balanced. Unlike your car, aircraft typically have 3 fuel tanks, but they noticed that the fuel in the right wing was lower than that of the left wing. It turns out there was a fuel leak caused by maintenance in the right wing, but the pilots didn't know about this. So they shared fuel from the left wing to the right wing. Unfortunately though, the leak was extremely bad and subsequently the plane ran out of fuel halfway through its journey. Fortunately though, the nearest airport was Lajes Air Base, 65 nautical miles, 120 kilometers or 75 miles away, which was just in range of the aircraft's gliding distance at the time. And with the help of the ground, the pilots managed to glide the plane and make a hard landing, causing 8 tires to burst, but landed the plane nonetheless, saving the lives of all 306 people on board. Amazing work to the pilots, and fun fact, this incident actually holds the record for the longest glide by a commercial aircraft. Though I do want to say this, originally I didn't want to put this incident here because it didn't really show off the strength of these Airbus jets, because let's be real, all planes are designed to glide, it's just a matter of luck to see if the nearest airport is within range or not. And compared to the previous incidents I mentioned and the ones that I'm going to mention soon, this just doesn't really show off Airbus itself. But on the Boeing video, I got so many comments saying, where is British Airways Flight 9? Where is Air Canada Flight 143? So you know what? I'm putting this incident here. Now let's cover a series of incidents together because they are all basically the same thing. I I gotta start off with this incident because I know if I don't, everybody is gonna ask me where is this incident, so here it is. On the 15th of January 2009, US Air 1549, an Airbus A320 took off from New York when it encountered a flock of birds causing both engines to flame out. And with the nearest airport being too far away, Captain Solly and First Officer Jeffrey Skills decided to ditch the plane in the Hudson River. And when they did, all 155 people managed to survive, and the aircraft remains on display at a museum in North Carolina. Next up, on the 2nd of August 2005, Air France Flight 358, an Airbus A340 was attempting to land in bad weather at Toronto. But due to pilot error and the bad weather, the aircraft overshot the runway and crashed. Amazingly though, all 309 people managed to evacuate the aircraft within 90 seconds. No one was killed in the incident. And now moving on to one of the more recent incidents that seem to break the hearts of a lot of kids because it's an A350. I mean, the A350 is not my favorite plane, but I get it, okay? I absolutely get it. On the 2nd of January 2024, a Japan Airlines A350 was coming in for a landing at Haneda Airport when it collided with a smaller aircraft, a DHC-8. Unfortunately though, 5 people were killed on the DHC-8, with only 1 person surviving. But better news on the A350. All 379 people managed to get out of the plane alive, with only 17 of them sustaining injuries. All 3 of these incidents really show how tough these jets are built, landing in a river, crashing in a field, or smashing into another plane. Yet these planes stayed together enough for minimal injuries and for everyone to be able to get up and leave. And the evacuation process, flawless, quick and efficient. Well done, Airbus. There is one more incident that I want to mention, but I don't know much about this incident, hence why I didn't put it in this video. Sichuan Airlines Flight 8633, which was an A319. But again, I don't know much about this incident, hence why I didn't put it in the video, but I just thought I'd mention it. But wait, there is one more incident I want to cover, and it's the most impressive one yet. Have you noticed all of the incidents that I just mentioned, how little they are and how not so serious they are? I had to look up and do a lot of research in order to put this video together. That just shows that there weren't that many incidents to begin with, which means maybe the real moment when Airbus becomes air tanks is every single flight that takes place, because there's just so little incidents to begin with.